Good morning, everybody. Very warm welcome to today's session. You're hired, how to get a job in 2021. It's so nice to be back at Limmud this morning. Just briefly, before I introduce my colleagues, I'd like to briefly take a minute or two to tell you about Resource for those who are not familiar with us and why we're speaking to you today. So at a time of year when it's traditional to think about New Year's resolutions, many people this year will sadly have put finding a new job high up on their list. COVID has had a devastating impact on the jobs market. And so whilst we went into 2020 with record low levels of unemployment, the figures are now rising fast. High levels of competition for each job means it's vital to be well prepared to apply for jobs. Unfortunately, Resource is here to help. We describe ourselves as the community's go-to resource, helping people get back into employment. We do this in two main ways: by helping building people's skills and boosting their self-confidence, really empowering them to find the right job. We have a highly skilled team of professional volunteers who help around 1,000 people each year through their job search. And thanks to the support of our donors, our services are all free. We help people with all aspects of their job search, including CVs, application forms, covering letters, job interviews, assessment centres, the list goes on. And we'll stay with you from the beginning to the end of your job search. Our details will be in the chat, so please don't hesitate to have a look at our website or give us a call if you'd like some help with your job search. Okay, I'd like to introduce you now to my colleagues who will be presenting at the session. First of all, Jonathan Bergwork, who is one of Resource's superb volunteer advisors. To Kim Maidman, our professional consultant, who is going to man our Q&A, and Mike Beryl, our Chair of Trustees, who produced our videos for today's session and is going to facilitate the questions at the end. So if you've got questions during this session, if you'd please look at the chat function and direct them to Mike Beryl as a panelist, he will ensure that it gets looked at and answered if at all possible. So over to Jonathan now.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Yeah. So as Victoria said, I've been an advisor at Resource for 6 years now. Over that time, over 150 people I've seen individually and helped to get into work. And it's a great privilege to be able to do this on behalf of the community. Okay, I'm going to go through a slide presentation. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And we will just hopefully be able to see this. Okay, so what you can see from this is the agenda for today. I'm going to be looking at these 5 aspects. So what's going on in the job market? Victoria already mentioned that it's a tougher time, but it's not as bleak as many people think it is. However, it has changed what employers are looking for. I'm going to give you some insight into that. In order to be effective in this job market, it's really helpful to have a toolkit of resources which you can use to get yourself into work. A toolkit meaning it's not mandatory, it's not something that you use all the time, but it's great to have a variety of different tools to be able to pick out at any as appropriate. And I'll take you through a number of those. Obviously, a key to that is interviews, which have changed in this new world. They're typically on Zoom. And I'm going to show you a few examples of how those actually can work. And then finally, I'll talking about what help is available to you in your job search. I'm really trying to make this session as practical as I can. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to go away with some concrete hits and tips if you're looking for a job or you think you might be in the coming year. And as Victoria mentioned, as we're going through, please do write any questions or points in the chat room so that we can pick those up at the end. I'll leave about 10 minutes for questions at the end. Okay, so how is the job market different today as it was a year ago? Well, first of all, it is active. So the latest figures that we could find, over 500,000 vacancies were posted between September and November, which is a lot. It is lower than last year, about 1/3 lower. And obviously the number of people looking for jobs is actually up, but there are significant numbers of vacancies. New jobs are being created, particularly in some sectors. So we've got a few here, so technology or customer services and so forth. There's currently 10,000 vacancies in the NHS alone. And these are brand new jobs. Some sectors are finding it tougher. So travel, events, some aspects of retail as well. This happens all the time. It's exaggerated at the moment, but it happens all the time in that certain industries are more popular than others. Definitely a greater competition for roles. So whereas before you could have expected, I don't know, maybe a couple of hundred people to apply for a role online, that is now increased rapidly, significantly. It doesn't mean that all these applications are good. It's so easy to apply for roles online that many of them are just getting weeded out by a computer before it even gets to a person. But nonetheless, it's a tougher job doing it. So different ways of getting through to that job market are needed. If you think of it from the other side of the fence, from the employer's point of view, the job that they've got is really tough. If they're being inundated with 2,000 applicants for a particular role, how do they shortlist those and how do they get them down to the final person is a real challenge. And getting into their way of thinking can help you as an applicant get higher up the list. Competition is particularly tough for younger people. So lots of schemes have been cancelled or been put on hold. It is definitely more challenging here, and maybe a completely different strategy is needed. So I'm not trying to say it's not tough if you're young. It definitely is. There are some positives. The Kickstart scheme, for example, to help young people. So again, just different varieties of techniques are going to be needed. And what that all means is that it really helps to be creative when you're looking for jobs. The standard approaches are much less successful than they were a couple of years ago. So in fact, there's only one message that you take away from today. It would be try to be proactive in your approach to looking for jobs. Don't do what the textbooks would say that you should do because everyone else is doing that. You need to do something different. So particularly if you applied for a job a couple of years ago, were very successful, if you use that exact same technique, it's much less chance that you'll be successful today. And certainly if you applied 10 years ago, just about everything has changed. So what are employers looking for? Well, the key thing is, well, actually there's two key aspects which they're looking for. One is specialist technical knowledge and skills, professional skills. So for example, this might be that you've got knowledge in internet security. If you have, great, that's fantastic. You're going to walk into a job. Those are the easiest ones to find jobs for, a particular technical skill or level of experience, particularly if it's in demand, clearly. The second aspects are these transferable behaviors, which everyone has got or should have, and they're needed to meet the needs of both the job and the organization. Now, the technical skills aren't really changing that much, but the transferable behaviors, there's some which are really important going forward. And here's some that I've highlighted here. So resilience, we know that people's mental health is being challenged in this situation. The ability to work on your own at home, for example, is requiring a different level of resilience than before. So your proof that you can do that is really important. Flexibility to change in circumstances. So I as a presenter here today have had to learn how to cope with presenting to a computer screen rather than to an audience of people. You listening to this are having to learn how to be able to pick up information in this way. The job of the moderator is totally different. So flexibility important, creativity, the standard ways of doing things are less effective than they were. So if you can prove that you got creativity, fantastic. Self-managing. So you're not going to have the day-to-day support around the photocopier that you were used to having. So can you prove that you've got those self-managing skills? And then finally, confidence in using IT, not just for technical jobs, but for any aspect of IT. Sorry, any aspect of any jobs. Even today, we're so embedded in it and just going to Limmud that confidence in using it is really important. The good thing about all these skills is that they can be learned and that you can provide the evidence that you've got them. But that is what you actually need to do, because from employers' point of view, they have no idea whether you're good at these aspects. So from your point of view, you need to help them to gain the confidence in you by showcasing yourself. And the key to that is publicizing yourself. And there's a whole toolkit of options, of ways of doing that. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with some of them, but we're going to go through a few to give you some different ideas. So the core one is the CV. You can't get away without having a CV, but they come in different shapes and sizes. So it could be a standard chronological one, for example, whereby you list your experience from your oldest job to your most recent one. You describe what you achieved in it. That works well if you've got a standard career where you've gone through a process of jobs. If, however, you've moved from career to career, a different type of CV may be needed, a functional one, and I'll talk about that later. And these are just kind of a couple of examples. Most people will probably create a hybrid to suit them individually. You're clearly going to need a covering letter or an email, more likely these days. What does that include? How is that best written to position yourself to grab that attention? You've maybe got half a dozen seconds for someone to decide whether to bin you or take you forward. How should you best do that? Probably lots of you are going to get jobs or find openings for jobs, not through applying for jobs online, which have been advertised, but through networking. So what do? Do you send your own CV to network, or do you actually have something different? Maybe a personal profile would be appropriate, a different way of presenting yourself. And again, I'll show you something which you can use for that in a minute. So you finally met somebody online. You've got a few seconds to be able to really get across what you're really like. The elevator pitch. This is critical because you need to make that first impression really count. The elevator pitch is also used at the start pretty much of every interview, formal job interview, when they say, can you tell me about yourself? You need an adaptation of that to pitch yourself to these to the interviewers, to be able to say what you stand for and how you can help them. And then clearly, you're going to need a social media presence. Definitely LinkedIn, definitely. It is really growing in importance every month. And maybe also a social media presence in Facebook and elsewhere. You need to think when you're looking at your portfolio of tools, what is the best way to make yourself stand out from others? You may decide, I need to take a risk. I need to be very different. I really need to grab people's attention. So maybe a video CV is the way to go. Maybe if everyone is writing emails, maybe you do a handwritten letter. Maybe if you're in marketing and you want to show your expertise in writing copy, you create an advert advertising yourself. All these tools are designed to help others get a clear view of what you're like. So they are not selling yourself so much as communicating clearly. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples of it. Well, let's start off with a bad example. This is a bad CV. It looks terrible, and it is terrible. It's based upon a real life terrible one, unfortunately. You probably are straining to read it at the moment. And that's because someone who's written this has not thought about the font they've used. They have used haphazardly bold. The layout is terrible. I don't know if you can see, they've actually put their age on here, which is really not helpful. The order of the sections is awful, and there's so many typos. I'm going to move on quickly because it is so offensive seeing that. This is an example of a much better CV, and it's actually the functional CV, which I talked about earlier. You've got the biographical details at the top. You've got a summary of the individual in bold, a bigger font, a clear view, a shortened down version of that elevator pitch. You've then got the key achievements. Key achievements are crucial. Someone is employing you for what you can deliver for them, their achievements. If you imagine at the end of the year, you're having a review and they say you've done really well because you've achieved X, Y, Z, that's what should be going up here. And then the skills and the experience which you can bring to the organization. Typically, this is customized each time to match the needs of the organization. You've then got the career summary, qualifications, and so forth. And I should say also, woven into the words in the achievement and experience are something called these keywords. In order to get this CV through the computer, you need to beat the algorithms, which are going to look for certain keywords and combinations of words. So your writing of this CV is really crucial to moving forward. I mentioned earlier that you might well be getting introductions not through applying online, but through networking. And this CV here is maybe a bit formal for that. So instead, you might want to use a networking CV or a personal profile. And this is based upon the sorts of material which a headhunter would produce for an organization when they're shortlisting candidates. You have your picture, and you can see this is Victoria, with a summary of what she's about, what a next job is for her. I hope she isn't thinking of leaving, and her contact details. The career history, the achievements and skills, so far, so similar to the functional CV. But this is the different part. This is a narrative which tells Victoria's story, written in the first person, trying to tell people how she's got to where she is today and what's driven her, what really stands out about her. You can see it's far more informal and accessible and useful in lots of situations. You can use this, by the way, in the About section on your LinkedIn profile. For those of you that have got a more formal approach, you might find this is really a lot better. Okay, so you've got some CVs, you've developed that. How on earth do you get to the job market? Well, there are really two different approaches. The first approach is, I said, through this open job market. So these are where jobs are advertised, they're known about, and you can respond to them through sending your CV. They're easy to respond to because they're known, and maybe they are too easy to apply to because everyone else is seeing them as well. Obviously, you need to customize your CV each time to make sure that it matches what they're actually looking for. And maybe about 20% of jobs are advertised and are known this way. The vast majority are not. They come through this hidden job market. There's a job vacancy, but they're not being advertised, perhaps because employers are concerned about being inundated with applications. So the most crucial and important way for many people to get jobs is through networking and speculative applications. So these are when you get recommendations from your contacts and you get the opportunity to chat with someone and share your skills. They're more work to find these, but much less competition. So much easier to get the job once you found them. Okay, so let's assume you've got a strategy to get these and you've been successful. You've got that interview. Well, how do you prepare for that in this age of COVID? The first major difference is that it's probably going to be a Zoom interview, and you need to prepare well for that. So I'm going to play you a short video on how to do that.
Where is Lynn? We should have started 5 minutes ago. This is ridiculous.
Sorry. Hi, I'm here. Hi.
Lynn, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Damn, where's that video button? Hold on.
She obviously hasn't checked the technology.
This? No. That's the mic. Oh, hello. Here. Oh, right. Sorry about that.
Oh, Lynn, I have the video now, but I can't see you properly. Could you reposition the screen, please? Right. Okay, that's a bit better. She doesn't look very happy, and she isn't looking at the camera, and those clothes give me a headache. Really? She certainly doesn't look very professional in her bedroom. Really, and I'm supposed to interview her. I think I'm giving up now.
Oops, I think I've played the wrong video. I think I played the one of Lynn before she'd been to Resource for help. And clearly Lynn has not thought through about how to be interviewed on Zoom. She's lost the job before even speaking. She was late. She hadn't worked out the technology. She hadn't thought about her surroundings and her background. Swinging on the chair is distracting. And to have a mobile ringing was terrible. At least she didn't answer it. So what did Lynn learn after she'd been through resource coaching?
Where is Lynn? We should have started 5 minutes ago. This is ridiculous.
Just,
Oh, good. I'm on time. In fact, I'm a little bit early. That gives me time to get myself together. I've got a lovely clear background, so no distractions. I look professional, and I'm wearing a colour so I don't disappear into my background. I'm looking at the camera, and in fact, I'm going to put a little sticky note to remind myself to keep looking at the camera. And that way I won't forget, because otherwise it won't look as though I'm speaking to the interviewer. I'm smiling, which is good, so that's more approachable. My mobile phone is turned off. I've got no other distractions, and I'm ready to go.
Okay, so you can see there's lots of online etiquette. There's lots of rules about how to use the software, the appropriate background, the positioning of the camera, whether to use a headset, and so forth. The great thing is that you can practice and get actual feedback by videoing yourself and so forth. Now, like a face-to-face interview, the first impressions in a Zoom interview really matter. So your appearance, your body language, your tone of voice, you need to come across as positive. It's especially important to have a confident answer to the very first question, tell me about yourself. So let's see how our next candidate did on that.
Welcome, Gemma. Thank you for coming to talk to me about the resource marketing manager role.
Hi, Kim. Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
I've obviously looked at your CV and your application, but it would be helpful if you could just take a minute or so to tell me a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Gemma. I've got 2 kids. I went to Haberdasher School and Leeds University, and now I'm looking to find something to do with my time, so I'm looking for a job.
Thank you.
Okay, so Gemma is fine on the Zoom etiquette. Her body language is okay, her tone of voice is fine, she's looking at the camera, but she's giving irrelevant information. Kim doesn't need to know about her personal life or what she did years ago. Instead, Gemma should be explaining how her experience fits the role and that she has a commitment to the charitable sector and the employer. She needs to get across her best points quickly. So let's see how she did after a bit of coaching from Resource.
Welcome, Gemma. Thank you for coming to talk to me about the resource. Welcome, Gemma. Thank you for coming to. Welcome, Gemma.
Sorry, seem to be stuck. I've gone too far. Right, let's try this.
Welcome, Gemma. Thank you for coming to talk to me about the resource marketing manager role.
Hi, Kim. Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
And you too. I've obviously read your application, but it would be helpful if you could just take a minute or so to tell me a little bit more about you.
Sure, I'd love to. So I'm a marketing professional. I've specialised in brand development and communications, most recently with TK Maxx, but also with other brands such as Jaguar Land Rover, Sky and Mini. A key part of my most recent role was to develop a holistic approach to our brand communications, so be that on social media, website or digital content. And this required successful management of stakeholders up to a very senior level in order to make it all happen. I've got a keen interest in the charitable sector, and I'm the founder and chairperson of a committee called Look at Me. Me is for ME. We raise awareness and funding for sufferers of ME and chronic fatigue syndrome. And in our first year, we raised over £13,000. I'm an active member of the Jewish community, and I spent a year living in Israel, working and studying in the community. I was really interested when I saw the advert for this role, as I know from friends and family the brilliant work that Resource does in helping the community.
Great. Okay, so that is much better. She's shown how she has got the experience and interest to do the role by giving examples. She's researched the employer and comes across as really wanting to work for Resource. Now, there are obviously loads of ways you can answer that first question, depending on how you match the job. Maybe it's better to come up with something unusual to grab attention and emphasize your unique combination of experience of skills. What is your USP, your unique selling point? Why should you really get the job? One way of answering this question is to focus on the three things which maybe make up your personal brand and that you want the interviewer to remember about you. You can even start off with saying, well, there are three things you need to know about me, and that will help you structure your answer. You also need to practice this answer. Gemma's got good content, but at times she was hesitating and she could have a more positive body language. If she practices, she will become more fluent, and that will give the interviewer more confidence in her. She also needs to prepare great answers to the follow-on questions. So why did you leave your last job, for example? What are your strengths and weaknesses? How are you set up to work from home? Or what happened when you last had to take on an area of new responsibility? Let's see how our next interviewer, Eric, responded to that type of competency question.
Perhaps next you can tell me about when you had to take on a new area of responsibility.
Yeah, well, we are asked if we could design a new course. Now, it wasn't our responsibility, but the person who was responsible was frankly pretty useless. So, they asked us to do it instead. So we got it all together. We wrote the lectures, we produced all the material, and got everything and implemented the new course. The students loved it, and we thoroughly enjoyed doing it.
Oops, Eric isn't explaining himself at all well. Kim won't have a clue about his ability to take on new responsibility. because he didn't give her enough specific evidence that he has this experience. She's looking for some specific examples. So when answering questions about your competence, a really good structure to use to prepare your answers is STAR. And we spend a lot of time at Resource coaching clients in this technique. You can use this whenever you're asked a question which starts, tell me about a time when you...
Perhaps next you can tell me about when you had to take on...
Let me move on to STAR to explain how this actually works. So it's in 4 different sections. It starts off with the background, just the situation in which you want to give the example. You spend very little time on this. You then describe the task that you had to do. Make this as difficult and as demanding as possible so that it will come across as impressive. The bulk of your time you spend on A, the actions which you're actually doing. So what you did, how you did it, go into the details at this point. And finally, R, the results you achieved or the reflections which you had as to what you actually learned. So let's see if Eric can do better next time.
When I was a career advisor at the Liver University, I was asked to develop and implement a completely new course, which wasn't part of my responsibility. The course was to help second-year students get a summer vacation job or an internship in the year ahead. And I had to develop all aspects of the course, the content, the activities, and everything involved. So the first thing I had to do was establish timescales, budgets, resources that were going to be available to me, so I knew the constraints with which I was working. I then decided I should consult, obviously, with those people who would be attending these courses to find out what their expectations were and what things they felt were important to them in order to improve their opportunities of getting a placement. And then that got me thinking, why not talk to someone who had already successfully achieved a holiday placement? And the key things they told me were help with applications, help with putting together a CV, interview practice, and trying to understand the minefield of an assessment center. So from this, I was able to put together a basic framework and then develop each of the specific elements. So of those who attended the course, 90% were able to get their first choice placement or internship, and the other 8% were also successful, although not necessarily their first choice.
Excellent. That is so much better. You can really see how Eric went about planning, developing, and implementing the task. Obviously, you also need to prepare your questions for the interviewer. Maybe what is the difference between good and great performance in an age of coronavirus? There's also something here about making a difference between the first interview and subsequent interviews, where you may get a presentation or something else to do. After the first interview, you've done really well to get through, but it's a level playing field again. If you simply repeat what you did at first interview, it's not going to be sufficient. You need a different strategy. If the first interview is all about showing why you shouldn't be ruled out and that you hadn't got any serious weaknesses, the second interview is all about maybe showing that you can really do the job. It's about showcasing your strengths. It's about taking a few risks, showing how you can add value. If you get a third interview, a different approach is needed again. You don't need to be perfect to succeed at these interviews. Superman is not applying for jobs, luckily. You simply need to have enough strengths and a plan on how to deal with your weaknesses. And I guess the other point is that the interviewer is desperate for you to succeed at the interview. They want to make their life easier, so you can help that by giving them the information they need. Now at Resource, we find that the biggest block to people being effective at this is really getting your head in the right place to do an effective job search. And that requires a couple of different aspects. First of all, you need to be logically approaching this whole process. You need to decide on goals and your stepping stones on a weekly and daily basis. It probably makes sense to do a financial plan to see how long you can survive unemployment. And most importantly, you need to proactively manage your time, working out where is the optimum way to use your energy. It's likely to take most of your day, as it said here. And if you do that, it becomes a numbers game. If you put enough in the funnel, something will come out at the end. That's all very well. That's all very logical. There's also an emotional aspect to this. It is tough doing this process, particularly if you've been doing it for some time. It really helps to have a supportive network, to be aware that your mental and physical health will suffer during this, and to expect to have good days and bad days. I'd say don't put all your eggs in the one basket. Give yourself some treats and rewards for doing things well. Talk with people, go out for walks. There's a whole process to managing yourself in this whole process. So if you've got a good plan, you're being proactive, you're working on your confidence. The third thing, which I think makes sense to do, is to have, some humility. It's very tough to do this on your own, and it's great to ask for help. And that's where we can help you. So we are this free help for the Jewish community in helping people get back to work. We do this in a number of different ways. So all clients are supported by a dedicated advisor, which will be me or one of my colleagues, and we're here by your side to help you through this process. We're your individual coach, someone that you can let off steam with. Our only agenda is to help you get a job. We can also give you access to a whole series of best practice webinars. For example, you can see here the different tools which I've talked through, as well as many others, LinkedIn, how to start your own business, a whole range of different webinars. One advantage of this way of working these days is that we can give you some great coaching. For example, I'm being interviewed on Zoom. So we can really give you dummy interviews. We can keep the recording. We can go through it. You can see when your body language isn't correct and so forth. And we can also help you with your networking. So although our services are free, one of the things I think we expect from clients is that once they've successfully got a job, they will help with future clients. And our alumni network is fantastic that way. So we can put you in contact with people in the community who might well be able to help you. In purely practical terms, our office is shut at the moment and reopens on the 4th of January, but there's lots of information on the website and you can email as well during that time. And just if you've got immediate issues, there is other information that you can receive on a whole range of financial and legal concerns, and I just put up on the website on here some examples for you. Okay, so that's all that. I'm now going to stop screen sharing.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's great. So thank you, everybody. There's been some questions coming in, and I'm going to pass the first one to Kim. Kim, Sarah says, I know that you're saying to be creative, but I find most employers ask for you to apply in very specific ways. How do you find the balance between standing out and fulfilling the requirements and expectations of the employer? Interesting question.
It is a very interesting question. Well, I think the first point to make is that responding to job adverts only accounts for up to about 40% of jobs found. As Jonathan indicated earlier, networking is key to getting a job. So this is one of the ways in which you can be creative, is by utilising your network in a creative way. The second point I would say is, referring to the stars that we've talked about, is making sure that the stars that you use in your application and at interview are the very best that you can find for the particular role that, that you are applying for. And thirdly, I would say do your research and identify opportunities for making speculative applications, and make sure that with those speculative applications that you really find out what it is that that employer needs and demonstrate that you can meet that.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, good advice there. So, Jonathan, one for you. This is from another Jonathan. If you're looking for jobs while being self-employed, should you say in your CV and or at your interview for the position that you're still hoping to continue to be self-employed while working for the job you're applying for?
Probably not. I would say no. I mean, it depends what you really want to do, actually. If you want to stay self-employed, then I would focus on staying self-employed. If you tell an employer that you're not really committed to them, then they won't be committed to you. So decide what you want to do, though. If you're not going to be committed to them, I don't see why you would really be applying to them.
Okay. Victoria, one coming your way. This is from Jenny. Some advice, please, for someone who's looking for part-time work and is mature.
Okay, I think there may be two different questions in that. If we think about the part-time work first, we approach that really in the same way as applying for full-time work. The same amount of preparation would need to go into it, all the marketing tools that Jonathan talked about in the interview preparation. There are some particularly good websites and agencies that specialise in part-time and flexible roles, and certainly we could make those available and go through those with anyone who wants to know. And on the mature side, we feel very strongly that age is really not a factor and should not be. So on your marketing tools, for example, we really discourage any mention of age and anything that would give your age away. So for example, on the bad CV that Jonathan put up earlier, that someone put their age, absolutely no need to put an age on a CV, because after all, it is all about your experience. It's all about what you can offer the prospective employer, and the age really is not relevant in that discussion.
Okay, thank you. So Kim, at the other end of the spectrum, what about people who are currently at university and starting to find their way into the jobs market? Any advice for that end of the age spectrum?
Absolutely. It's never too early to start your job search. And you might do that by looking to get placements in vacations, which may be directly relevant to what you want to do, or to give you an opportunity to explore some ideas that you might have. The other thing that we would suggest is that if you haven't already, do look for paid work whilst you are studying. No matter what that paid work is, whether it's working in a bar, working in a shop, it can all help to enhance your CV and your application when you're applying for grad programs. And I'd just like to mention at this stage that we are developing some particular initiatives for graduates at the moment. So if there are some either current students or recent graduates in the audience and like to take part in that, then please do get in contact with us.
Thank you, Kim. Jonathan, question for you. And I'm pleased to see the questions coming in thick and fast. So if you have anybody else in the audience, any questions, please just pop them in the chat. But Jonathan, this one for you from Sarah. Do you have any advice to get started with networking for someone for whom it just doesn't come naturally?
Oh, it's so common that I would say, 80% of people say it doesn't come naturally. I think part of the issue is the word networking. It sounds kind of jargony and complicated and official and whatever. Actually, networking is talking to your friends, and it's sharing what you're all about and what you're looking for, and maybe even asking for advice. Most people want to help somebody. If you imagine a friend of yours was to contact you and say, I've just put together a networking CV like the one I showed you. Is there any chance of you looking at it and giving you some feedback? You would be delighted to help. So, and that's, I'm sure, what most people will be for you as well. They won't see you if they don't want to do that. So networking is all about establishing those, that expectation that, or just communicating that you are available in the job market, and that giving people the opportunity to help you. And you're really giving people the opportunity to do a mitzvah. So you're being a good Jewish person by doing it. So it's a bit like learning to swim this. You just need to jump in the water and you will get so much positive feedback for having done it. That would be my best advice.
Can I just add to that great advice, Mike? Just that we're finding that asking for sort of those networking conversations now that we're in lockdown has actually proved easier than before. So trying to get somebody a sort of 15 minutes of their time on Zoom is really not that difficult, and not nearly as difficult as trying to sort of get a half an hour at their office or in their local Starbucks. So really recommend, give that a try, and you might be very pleasantly surprised.
Thanks, Victoria. So yeah, Victoria, while you're on screen, let me ask another one of you. So you've made it all the way through to the interview and you've done your elevator pitch and your star. And at the end, you're asked, so do you have any questions for me? Can you give us some advice on the questions that you as an interviewee might want to ask?
Yeah, so first of all, again, it's down to preparation. We'd really say have those prepared, and you can have them with you. You can have them written down on a piece of paper, and you can actually say, do you mind if I get out my questions? I'm going to have a look at them. But it's a really good opportunity to score some brownie points, to actually show that you really want this role, that you've prepared for the interview, and that you really care. That it can show that you know something about the organisation. Or the field that they're in. I would caution against asking any sort of questions that you could find out from yourself. You know, I wouldn't ask something that would already be on the website of the company, and I wouldn't have it too focused on myself. You know, when could I have promotion, or what are the training like, things like that. You know, ask questions that show that you really care about that organisation and that the industry they're in, and I think you'll score many more points that way.
Victoria, can I come in here as well? One question which you could consider asking is, do you have any concerns about my application? Now, this is kind of a risky question in some ways, but it could also be a positive one. If they say no, well, psychologically, they're moved on and they are really positive about you. If they say, yes, I do have a concern, I don't like X, Y, Z, it gives you an opportunity to come back and address that concern. So it may be a question which you could consider using, particularly if you've got some sort of feeling from the body language that they have got some concerns which they're not actually raising. Thank you.
And just finally on that, always be prepared to answer that question yourself. So if don't, ask something that you think is a really clever, sort of fairly smarmy question, what might be the impact of Brexit on your organisation, or, something like that, because it could well be turned around. The interviewer may well say, well, what do you think on that? And you will look an absolute fool if you haven't got something prepared. So be ready to answer the question yourself.
Okay. Possibly from a time point of view, the almost the last one we'll have time for, but Jonathan, another one for you from Sam. If you have a gap on your CV because you were caring for a family member or bereavement, would you recommend putting that in your CV to explain the time you weren't working?
Yeah, so you've got some options here. If your online CV on LinkedIn, you're forced to do it. And instead of having a gap, I would explicitly explain that. And what's more, add to it by explaining the skills which it's given you. So caring for a relative has given you some transferable skills which might well be applicable in the job situation. So online, and when you're forced to do it a certain way, you have to do that. If you do the functional CV, which I described earlier, or maybe a hybrid of it, it can get a bit lower priority. It's on the second page. People probably aren't going to read it. So you can mask it to some extent. So the presentation of it is really important and there's various different options. We can work with you on the best way of doing that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Jean-Pierre, can I pass back to you, because I'm conscious that it's 10:02. I think we're happy to stay on for a few minutes, but others may want to move to their next session.
All right then, so thank you to Resource so much for that presentation. I thought that was really helpful. I was wondering if the presentation that Jonathan gave would be available anywhere, or if there are links to receive more information from you.
Yes, so I believe this recording of this session will be available, but it might take some time before it's available on Limmud's website. But what we'll do is we'll put this presentation on our website. So can we put into the chat our website now? I'll do that. And it will be available on our website shortly. If anyone would like to find out information and find any help, then please send us an email. On our website is the Contact Us section. And as we said, you know, it's such a competitive market now. So to be as well prepared as possible, as well practiced as possible, you know, just gives you the advantage. So can I thank my colleagues who've presented this morning very much for being here. And one thing I don't think we mentioned is that we can help people now all around the UK. So although we're based in Finchley in North London, our services are online, and so we're really happy to help people absolutely wherever they are in the country.
Okay, so thank you to everyone. I'll leave that. I'll leave the room open for a few minutes if you need to write down the email address. But I can already see some people using the reactions to clap and saying thank you for your services. I'll also suggest that if anyone has any other questions, if they can move to the Slack channel as well. The channel is the skills channel. And thank you very much. I hope you all enjoy the rest of Limmud.
Thanks, Jean-Pierre. Thanks for looking after us. While we've still got people on, and if we've got a few minutes, we'll just sort of try and pick up one more question at least, which I think, again, Jonathan, is for you, and I think you've partly answered it. But Sarah asks, for interviews, do you have any advice on trying to predict interview questions?
Yes. Okay, so the interview questions fall into two different types, really. There are the general ones, which are, what are the strengths? What's your strengths and weaknesses? Why do you leave your last job? Describe the biggest challenge you've had. How do you like to be managed? There's about 10 of these. They're online. You can really prepare great answers for each of those. There's a lot. If you email in, I can send you links to which other to those. The other type of questions are these competency questions. Now, in the advert which you'll get, or which you put up, they will specify the behaviours and skills which they're looking for. If they're good, they'll maybe have half a dozen priorities. Lots of organisations will put the kitchen sink into it. Nonetheless, the ones at the top are the most important. So I would prepare star responses to those competency and skill questions. Overall, I probably have in my head 6 to 10 examples which I can use. You're not going to get more questions for that, and you'll be able to find that you can use your star answer for a number of different competencies. Over and above those couple of types of questions, you get the maverick questions, such as how many hairdressers are there in the UK? And you cannot prepare for those. And whether you want to work for an organisation that asks those sorts of questions is another point. So prepare for the core. And then also the other bit of preparation I would do is come across as confident. So calm yourself down, put yourself in the right frame of mind before the interview. Don't worry about what you don't know, focus on what you do know. Self-management is the other bit of key preparation you can do.
Can I add one which I used as an interviewer, and I was really shocked how many people couldn't answer it. It was quite simply, tell me a little bit about what you know about my organisation.
Of course, thank you.
And it's shocking how people who are applying for jobs haven't actually read pages 1, 2 and 3 of the website of the company they're applying for. That would be my piece of advice in that.
And nowadays, it's not good enough, actually, just to have looked at the website. As one of our mock interviewers says, even my 6-year-old grandson could have read the website. It's actually, you know, quite lame just to have read the website. You know, we would expect that you'd have read some company reports, you'd have read press releases, what people are saying online about the organisation, their LinkedIn page. And it's so easy now. You know, you think about years ago when you'd have had to go down to the library and, you know, you had to sort of call up, you know, annual reports and things. And it is just so easy to do the research.